parenting podcast where we have conversations about grace and how to better disciple our own kids. I'm lead pastor Melissa, and I have a 2-year-old toddler.
I'm Reverend Bill Malden. I'm an associate pastor here at the church. I do family ministries, so I work with children, students, and their families. And I have a daughter who is a junior and a son who is a senior. So I have one heading out the door.
And I am Reverend Kevin Anderson. I have 2 kids, one who is a 10th grader and one who is a 6th grader. So while they're not heading out the door, one of them is learning to drive right now, which is awesome.
What's more terrifying, potty training, learning to drive?
The learning to drive was way rougher. Potty training, I got
Yeah.
my daughter potty trained herself, and we were potty training my son. And my daughter just went, oh, that? Okay. And she just did it. So we never even potty trained the second one. She just trained herself.
Love it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
So, no, I'd say teaching Carson to drive is,
makes sense.
It's not
Other
terrible,
people.
but yeah, it's.
Oh, yeah. Potty training is you're going to make a mess on the floor. Driving is you almost killed us both. Do you realize you almost killed those people?
Do you realize
that dog, the guy in the street, you know?
Yeah. Do you realize I'm literally putting my life in your hands? That's what Kathy likes to say.
People in houses aren't safe when we go down the street right now. Yeah.
So today we are going to be talking about sin. We did talk about that in season 1. If you want to go back and look, I think it's episode 4, 5, 7, and even a little bit in 6. But so we're not going to rehash all of that, but we're going to just talk a little bit about sin. And so just to recap, we talked about original sin, and we talked about this, and we did this last week too. The inherent goodness versus inherent badness. Mm-hmm. Badness is a word. Yeah, sure. Yeah, goodness versus badness, and how that has framed theology for generations, for hundreds of years. And so we talked about that inherent goodness versus inherent badness, and then also talked about this understanding of sin that literally means to miss the mark. It's an archery term, actually, where you're if you're not focused, you're a little bit off center, and you're not gonna hit the target, and
not hitting that dead bullseye.
Bullseye, you're just a little bit off, and so
sin.
It is sin, and sometimes you're a little bit off, and sometimes you're a lot bit off. Yeah. But how that sin is missing the mark. And then we talked about, and I wanted to bring this up because I think this is a good starting point for this kind of new discussion, is we talked about this idea of generational trauma, mm-hmm. and how our lives are affected by our parents, even our grandparents, because they raised our parents, and then even extended family and friends who were around us and our parents and our grandparents. All of that kind of seeps in together, and a lot of that is good, but some of that can be bad, and that's what I think you brought up, mm-hmm. the term last season about generational trauma, that things are passed down to us whether we know it or not, or like it or not. So first question I have for the two of you is, after that discussion from last season, have you picked up on anything new as far as this idea of generational trauma, something that has come into your life, something that has affected you in a negative way, and how have you dealt with that?
Not really. I mean, it's because for me, it's something I've been aware for a while. So I don't think there's really anything new other than continuing on in that journey of realizing that there are things that I carry with me that for whatever reason they go for. Well, actually, I guess I maybe had a little one that was interesting.
You thought of one, well, yeah.
I thought of one as I started talking. Over Christmas, I was to lunch with my sister and my nieces, and my son Barrett was with me, and we started talking, and somehow it came out in the conversation, and she was like, "Wait, you spanked your child?" And I guess I told a story about spanking Barrett when he was little or something. And I was like, "Wait, you didn't spank any of your children?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "We got spanked." And she's like, "I know, that's why I don't do it." And so it's interesting. There's something that I did with my kids, feel how you feel about that, when they were little. But in my mind, it was kind of like, well, we were spanked, and so I spanked. And my sisters exact reaction is, the reason I don't spank is because we were spanked. And so in the same house for the same thing, she went to that's the reason I'm not doing that with I've intentionally chosen not to do that with our children, my children, because of what, and so it's an interesting that's a difference in just, again, I was raised in a home that, you got whooped, and so that's how we were raised, and so that was one of those, I was like, oh, that's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
So
For me, I wouldn't say there's anything new, but the interesting dynamic that I've been navigating is my mom is getting remarried. My dad passed away 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And so now that she's getting remarried, we're entering this there's new family, essentially, that's going to be entering the family. And that is kind of introducing their baggage.
Their baggage with your baggage, and how does your baggage work together? Does their baggage fit with your baggage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's been a fascinating, because Christmas was the first Christmas together.
Yeah.
And so
they bring all this with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so do you all.
Right. So so that was an interesting thing to navigate, and how did all of this play out and work and not work, and it was really fascinating to watch play out.
Yeah, I think we're filming this just after the holidays, where we go visit everyone, and or who you can, and things that just little things, that I notice, and the noticing, even kind of what you said with your family, is seeing the way that my twin brother parents, we were over at their house on Christmas night, and just seeing the way he parents and knowing the way that I parent, and then I'm like, man, I hear Dad's voice in him when he's talking to his kids, and I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting, because we both have a different parenting style, and just noticing that, and I think last season is what caused me to start to look at those things, and good or bad, right or wrong, I'm starting to notice those things, as far as, hey, we were raised in the same family. My brother and I lived in the same room until we moved out when we were in college, and yet some of the things are the same, and some of them are different.
Right.
And what I really love about this idea of the generational is, yes, there are things that have affected us as children and growing up, and now as parents, we don't have to take everything we don't have to take what we would consider bad from the way that we were raised. We don't have to take that with us. We can leave it there, and we can move past it, and we can choose our own way of parenting, and so my parenting is going to be slightly different than my parents, and I hope that my kids are slightly different, and by different I mean better than me as a parent. So have y'all noticed anything from that, a comparison of you and
I joke with my son about that all the time. I was a little hooligan as a child, and my son's a pretty well-behaved young man. And when he hears things that I would do at his age, he was like, what if I did that? And I always joke with him. I was like, you're raised better than I was. And I was like, it's like, you don't have the excuse I did. You got raised better than me. And so, it's I expect more out of you. I've raised you, and that was kind of the thing. It's I've raised you to be a better version. I don't want you to be. I don't want you to be me. I want you to be better than me. That's my dream for you. And so, but I do love that you brought up the idea, and I want to celebrate that with when we're doing this podcast. I love that it's that awareness, that you're becoming aware of something. We talked about something last season that you're having a greater awareness to, and that's one of the hopes for everybody with this, is that you just become aware of things. I think so much of our theology and our parenting is reflexive and responsive, and we don't know why we're doing it. We just know that we
just
are.
do it.
If we even know that we're doing it. And so just that you're having that awareness raised, I think, is just an awesome thing. And I hope for all of our listeners or watchers they're experiencing the same thing, that just by listening and being a part of this journey with us, that maybe just their awareness, if they don't even change their mind on this, that, or the other, just that they're more aware about their faith, their understanding of God, but also their parenting and how they live as a disciple of Christ, that the awareness is increased.
Well, I mean, like this whole discussion is that, to take it back to that definition of sin in the archery terms, it's like perhaps our parents were hitting the red, right, on the target of, yeah.
Middle black.
Middle is black, right? Black,
I think
yellow.
it's blue, black, yellow, red. I thought the red was the center. I don't know.
I don't have my phone.
We're clearly not archers.
Okay, so let's say it's
just
like,
around the target,
Yeah,
but not
but
the bullseye.
Whatever color's on the outside.
I was even thinking closer to
Yeah.
middle, and like perhaps we're, therefore on our parenting,
Right.
moving to the edge of yellow or whatever the next color in is,
Next one inside.
Yes, moving closer.
Towards the
Closer
We're
to the
moving
bullseye.
closer to the bullseye.
Gotta give some
right?
direction on
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah. Somebody in the comments can correct us
Yes,
below,
please.
right? Please help us
Because
out.
clearly we don't know.
Somebody
what
do
we're
a
talking
quick
about.
Google search, right? Yeah, but that we're just getting a little
Right.
bit better with that
Yeah.
awareness, with that, like what we're choosing to carry on and what we're choosing to say, ooh, we noticed that this wasn't good. And but also I think our parents had to do the same thing. So
Oh,
for
yeah.
example, both of my parents came from broken family systems as well. And my mom was raised in a day and age where there wasn't single moms, right? And so her grandparents, so my great grandma, who actually Ellis is named after, it was her surname, but her name was Esther Ellis, and as a pastor, I thought Esther for my daughter might be Bill's shaking his head like, no, don't do that.
Is it too spot on?
I know, right?
mean,
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, Ellis,
Yeah, there you go.
But anyways, so my great grandmother, right, my mother's grandparents had a major hand in raising her, because my mom's mom had to do a lot of work in a day and age when women still didn't do a lot of work. And then my dad's parents, they also were divorced, but one of the things that that made also it made this interesting dynamic between my parents that made it to the end. Like my dad passed away and they were married till the end, and I loved it because they had this mentality that we're gonna make it kind of thing. And they were actually told the day of their wedding by both sides of their family, why are y'all getting married? Just live together. That was the advice given to them. And so that to me is them aiming to do a little better, right? But also, they chose to follow my mom's career path, because my mom's career was the one that was taking off, and my dad just kind of was a jack of all trades. So he was like, I could do this or that, whatever, wherever we go, kind of thing. And my dad ended up being a stay-at-home dad, later on in life when my mom's career.
Way before that was the thing.
Way before that was a thing. Because when my mom's career did well enough, didn't need to go to work, and my dad was able to be there for me and my sister. But on top of that, my dad had this mentality, and his mom instilled it in him, which is that you need to not just know how to do the man stuff because you're a boy. You also need to know how to cook and clean. Right. And so my dad instilled that in me and my sister. You need to not just know how to do the girl-woman stuff. You're not going to just know how to cook and clean. My
you're
dad.
You're going to change your tire.
Yeah,
you're going to
on my
change
16th,
your oil.
Yeah. On my 16th birthday, my dad gifted me we had a single door garage, and he gifted me the automatic garage door mechanism so that I wouldn't have to get out to manually open it. But I had to install it myself.
Oh, wow.
He helped me, but I had to be the one to read and
And you didn't have YouTube to tell you.
I did not have YouTube at that time. Yeah, right? Yeah. So, anyways, but that was my dad's mentality. And again, I say all this because like I think it was that moving the mark inner and inner, And so I take on, Ellis is too young to know all this, but like that's one of the pieces.
That's where you're going as a parent.
Exactly. So I would say that's almost the opposite of the trauma. That's a piece that I will continue the story on, is I'll continue that trajectory of Ellis is going to know how to cook, clean, and install the automatic garage door opener.
I think it goes both ways, though,
It
right?
does.
Because there is the generational trauma or curse, but there's the generational blessing.
Yeah.
And often, if we choose to address the trauma or the curse, we can find the blessing, and that can be, if we're willing to do what needs to be done, that can be what we send forward.
Yeah.
But again, it comes with that awareness. We have to be aware and know that we can make the choice.
Yeah. So this is going to be kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
So let's take us first outward on the bullseye. So kind of part A of the question. Where is a time that you have seen where you or someone close to you clearly missed the mark on parenting? I mean, and it can be a tragic story, it can be funny, whatever. Is there a time where you're like, oh, how, where's a time that you have seen someone clearly miss the mark? And yes, we're talking about this idea of sin. So yes, sin is a part of this. When is a time you have clearly seen that in your own life?
I have a story for that one that I've shared before that I still laugh about. My son, when he was probably about 5 or 6, was on a flag football team. And because of the team, we're all little friends. Ended up at a birthday party it's mostly the flag football team kids. And I ended up hanging out with the dads. And the little town I lived in was Salina, Texas. And if you know anything about Salina, Texas, they are famous for their football. Small town, but they used to have a lot of state titles, big deal. And so most of these guys are old Salina guys. They all played football at Salina. And they start talking stories and even, talk about the kids' game, whatever. And one of the dads starts to tell a story. And the guy was actually a really great guy. He'd been my son's soccer coach the year before, and I just thought he was wonderful. But he starts telling a story about his own son one year, and I guess the kid was about 4 or 5. They had gotten second place in a soccer league. And as they're getting to the car, he told his son, "You leave that trophy in the parking lot. We don't take home anything but first place. Anything but first place means you're a loser, and you're going to leave that trash in the parking lot." And made like a 4 or 5-year-old little boy leave his second place trophy, not participation ribbon, second place trophy. Made him leave it there as he's crying. And I'm hearing the story like, my wife would divorce me. And every other guy in that group was like, good job. That's what you got to do.
To the dad.
Yes. You cannot let these kids lose because then they're losers. That is what real parenting looks like. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything in this room because I'm clearly the only one that thinks that's not a good idea. But I'm there with like 10 other like dads. And they're all like, that's awesome. And I'm like, ooh, nope.
Well, see, here's...
But again, I think they wanted to do well. They want to teach your kids to do well. But boy, did I think you miss a mark with, leave that second place trophy in the parking lot. That's garbage. We'll never,
I'm just going to tell you, I found my 3rd place Lincoln Douglas debate plaque at my mom's house over Christmas, and I brought that bad boy here. I'm sorry, I don't care if it's 3rd place or 2nd place. It's like, I earned that.
Melissa will show her first place one later.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's one that I think it was just like, I realized, and then again, I think that was a good group of guys for the most part. I mean, those are good dads. These are involved, caring, and meaning well, but I'm like, you missed the mark.
Yep.
All right, any stories?
Oh, I have one, but I'm going to be real honest. It's not going to be for the podcast.
Okay. We'll talk about that later.
So we have instances where we as parents, I'm trying to think of, I think for me, where I've missed the mark quite frequently is just with my tone of voice with my children, where I don't.
I do have a.
I don't understand. I don't see it as much, and it's like raising my voice more than I need to, or less quicker than I need to. We talked last time about what was it you said? Something with maybe it wasn't last time, but we're talking about this idea of first you're nurturing.
Oh.
And then it's like
respect.
Then you're going to respect me, and then the third time it's like, say, okay, that's enough.
I hope you'll listen to me because I love you and you love me. If that doesn't work, then we will go down. Then you will respect me as the parent and my role and my authority within this home.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, then by God, I will make you fear me.
Yes, and sometimes I go from step 1 to step 3, and that's where I see I've missed the mark.
I do have a funny one that I can share.
Okay.
So the other day, so our pantry is cabinets kind of thing, these deep cabinets, and Ellis can get into them, and I don't mind, because the stuff that she can get to is stuff that she can have. And we also have chip clips, and I knew the other day that she was just playing with the chip clips in it, and I just thought it'd be funny to surprise her. And so she had the cabinet doors open, and I knew she would close them at some point, and so I'm just standing there with this big smile on my face. And she's not closing it, so I just kind of keep inching over, waiting for her to notice me. And then I'm full face in view and waiting. And I'm kind of starting to make a little noise. And she's just in her own little world
not even
playing
noticing.
with these chip clips. But she finally looks over, and the child physically shakes, startles, and begins to cry, and I was just I'm so sorry. I was just trying to.
If you're Winnie the Pooh style potty training, I wouldn't
do
worry
that.
about that.
It was before potty training.
Okay, I was gonna say
This is before Winnie the Pooh potty training.
My kids are 15, although I still try and startle them as much as I can.
I wasn't even trying to start. I was just trying to be silly.
Trying to be funny.
Yeah, but I jump scared the child, 2-year-old.
Ellis is going to tell that story in therapy one day.
That's right.
It's when I was 2, I have a vague
My
recollection. My first
memory
of this. So we clearly, as parents, and I know all of us as parents, or anybody watching this podcast, have missed the mark, and things haven't landed quite the way we wanted them to. So second part of this question, where's a time you have seen as your role as a parent in particular, specifically, where you have seen that you have gotten closer to the mark? You are closer to where you want to be in a way that you are parenting. A specific example, if you can think of one.
Where I'm closer to the mark where I'd like to be.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I have I'll think of, maybe as I ramble, I'll think of a specific one. I do just kind of think of, again, both of my children I think of turned out to be pretty good kids. And I look back at, again, some of my shenanigans that I can't even imagine either one of my children doing half of the, things of my childhood, and I'm like, well, they were just raised better. And I joke about that, but I also take pride in that. I'm like, I think my wife and I have raised our children quite well, and they've turned out quite well, and I'm pretty proud of that, and so that's one of those, just on the whole of it, I'm like, all right, they've, for the most part, pretty decent people. I don't think any of them's gonna, start a, genocide or anything like that, There are people that worried about me in my younger years, no. And so it's I don't know if I have a specific one, but just looking at things. But I even talked about that on the other side with my mom. I've talked about with my mom that I don't think my grandmother was a very nurturing, kind person. I mean, that's just the way it was. And I've always said there are some issues growing up in my household that I thought could have been better, but I always looked at it and said, you know what? But my mom did way better than my grandma did. And with what she had been raised with, I think my mom did an amazing job out of what she had to work with from what she had experienced. I was like, whoa, my childhood wasn't perfect, but I'd take my childhood any day over my mom's, and probably my dad's, if I heard my dad's childhood. And so I look at both of my parents and I've heard their childhoods, and I'm like, you know what, I can make comments about my childhood, but I wouldn't trade my childhood for either one of my parents' childhoods. And so I think they've moved the mark one rung in, and then that was my job, to move it another.
And I think it's not necessarily a knock on anybody. It's just, I think we should strive to be better than our parents and than their parents. And as we continue to move it along, I think we just get better.
Yeah.
We get better at it.
But I definitely feel my parents, like I said, did as good as they could and did better than what I think could have and should have been expected from them based on what they knew and what they were raised with. And so it's one of those, I can call out what I think are faults and flaws, but I think you also have to call out hey, I see how hard you tried and what you're doing, and again, I see that you're aiming for the bullseye. Yeah. Maybe you didn't hit it, but I know you were trying. Yeah. And I celebrate that.
Yeah.
It's such a small thing, but I strive to be really patient. And toddlers, their job is to test the boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. And so
they love the word no.
Yes, they do. And also, I did not realize I could be overtouched and overstimulated until toddlers. But I now know that there are points where I'm like, all right, and I'm out.
I need some me time.
Yeah, exactly. And so after, 2 quote unquote snow days, cold days in Texas, where it's just 24/7, right? At the end of the second day, as I was putting Ellis to bed, and Ellis gets when she's real tired, it's I'm wound up and I'm gonna move and shake, but it's the moving.
I'm fighting it.
It's the fighting it before the crash, right?
Yeah.
And so she's just squirming around in my lap as we're reading books, but she's not trying to fight being in my lap, but I'm gonna move in your lap. And there was this moment where she was sitting forward, and then she just whips her head back and just barely misses my nose. And I just took a deep breath in and exhaled. And then I said, hey, Ellis, you almost really hurt Mommy. And but internally I was having this dialogue with myself, because where I honestly was celebrating myself of I could have had this moment where I could have set her down and been nope, the punishment is you almost hurt Mommy and Mommy needs a minute, and now you don't get Mommy because Mommy needs, which would have had her melting down and would have been this whole big deal and and she was I'm sorry, Mommy, and was she still squirmy in my lap, but it was calmer squirmy.
Yeah.
But it for me, it was that I'm moving a little closer to
and sometimes it's as simple as taking a breath.
Exactly.
And counting to 10.
And if we're real honest, because of that simple ability to take a breath, I probably got her to bed 5 minutes earlier than if I would have set her down and she had the meltdown and da-da-da-da-da.
An hour. That's exactly, Kevin and I went to the same place. I was that ain't 5 minutes.
That's 5 minutes, you're deluding yourself.
That's not a 5-minute mistake.
I'm that's 45 minutes.
Right, yeah.
I went to the same place Kevin did. That ain't 5 minutes. And if meltdowns in your house are 5 minutes, no one wants to talk to you.
5 minutes, I was she has no idea.
Yeah.
So,
but we never had a 5-minute meltdown in my house, I'll tell you that.
No. They're generally a little longer. Yeah, so, well, our challenge for you this week is to try your best to hit the
Hit the
The
mark.
mark, hit the bullseye, whatever color that is. We're not real sure.
I'm pretty sure it's
But
black. I'm pretty sure the bullseye
I think
is
it's black with red, but then there's some green in there somewhere. I mean, who
I don't know
knows?
if there's green.
So start over. Our challenge for you this week is to look for, as you are moving throughout your week and as you are parenting, look for that time where you are closer to the mark of where you want to be.
And go with the blessing of this podcast, the benediction. Go to do no harm, to do good, and to stay in love with God as always. So we'll see you next week. Bye.
Lion face, ha! Lemon face, ooh. Lion face, ha! Lemon face, ooh.
Another
This is what I
compilation.
think of Bill.